I accelerated my success as a realtor by tuning into podcasts, and now it's time for me to give back. Join me while I chat with some of the top agents in the industry, gaining insight into how they became experts at selling real estate so you can too. Who am I? Well, I'm Mark Rawmaker. I went from selling $5 million in real estate my first year as a part-time agent to running a mega icon team who has sold over $260 million in real estate in just 5 years. I'll be your host while we talk to yet another amazing realtor crushing the game. Welcome to the Real Estate Ninja Podcast. Welcome to the Real Estate Ninja Podcast. I'm here to bring you interviews with top agents so you can learn more about how they are dominating the industry. And our guest today, we have Mr. Kyle Handy, one of the most famous realtors on YouTube. We will chat about his journey researching SEO and the tools he actually uses to help him rank on YouTube. Quite an impressive feat considering he nearly has 30,000 subscribers. In this episode, you'll get a wealth of valuable information, including tips and tricks you can use on your own SEO journey. Before we get started, though, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And it'd be awesome if you could give us a 5-star review so that more people like you can join in on this incredible podcast. All right, here's Kyle Handy. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Real Estate Ninja Podcast. This is the ultimate destination for anyone looking to sharpen the real estate skills and stay ahead of the game. Our expert guests will share their knowledge, experience, and tips to help you succeed in the industry. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we have one of my favorite people in the world, to be honest, Mr. Kyle Handy. He's a YouTube sensation. He's a star. He's everything. I'll give you a little bio, then we'll intro him. So Kyle Handy, the 36-year-old real estate agent and expansion team leader who's taken the industry by storm. An impressive 18 years of experience under his belt, Kyle is a true expert in the field, and his passion for real estate is absolutely infectious. After starting his own independent real estate brokerage in 2013, Kyle quickly realized that overhead costs were holding him back from achieving his full potential earnings. So in 2017, he made the bold move to join eXp Realty, and it's been nothing short of amazing ever since. With over 600 agents across 34 states and in Canada, Kyle's not only achieving incredible success for himself, but he's also helping other agents reach their goals too. Through his inspiring blog and YouTube channel, he's sharing his top tips and strategies with the world, and it's paying off big time. Kyle is living proof that hard work, determination, and a passion for real estate, anything is possible. Kyle, what's up, man? How are you?
What's up, Mark? Thank you so much, man. That's an amazing intro. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
And
man.
yeah, it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, it has been a fun ride. So Kyle and I, just a little background, we've been friends. We've been in business together. We figured this out a few days ago. I was on his podcast for almost 4.5 years, which is super fun, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited you're on here because you have a lot of different skill sets than most real estate agents, right? When it comes to SEO, when it comes to YouTube, you've created this path for a lot of agents that either don't know how to do it or are curious about doing it. So I'm definitely going to unpack all that stuff. But first, if you don't mind, let's start out let's go ahead and go over what'd you do before real estate?
Yeah. Well, so man, like real estate's been my whole life pretty much. I mean, so I got my license when I was 18. I'm 36 now. So for half my life, I've had my license. Like before that, I really, just had some kind of like part-time, basic jobs in the summer while I was going to school and stuff. And so literally straight out of college, I got my degree in finance. It was 2008, and I was like, I don't know really what to quite do yet. It was a tough market for finance, and even real estate. But my mom had happened to be a broker in real estate for some time, so she was like, "Why don't you just use your license and just see how it goes?" And so basically, I just jumped into real estate. Found out pretty quickly that I did like it. I had a knack for it. And even though it was a challenging market, I'm here in San Antonio, Texas. We still had, a lot of like military relocations. We had a lot of people still moving to the area. And so I was able to start doing pretty good and starting to, learn the sales skills and stuff like that. And basically just, over the years, my business evolved. I had a family. In 2013 is when we had our first kids. And I was like, I love real estate, but I also need to figure out a way to scale my business to be able to like build leverage into my business. And so I'm not working, nights and weekends and taking calls at all hours of the day. And so like 2013 was kind of like my first thought of like trying to build something that was more than just, an individual agent based business. And so I tried a bunch of different things, and, we can dive into all that different stuff, but I started an independent brokerage. I've done a lot of flip homes and rental property stuff. And then, like you mentioned, joined eXp in 2017. been building out a group here. But then in doing that, it got me kind of interested in the SEO game and kind of just, building up a website and a blog. And then that kind of transferred into a YouTube channel. And so it's been a fun journey, like I say, and I'm happy to unpack it all and kind of, share anything that, I've learned along the way with your audience. But yeah, happy to be here. Thanks so much, Mark.
That's an interesting journey that your mom was already in real estate. So you just kind of jumped on the train, which is
Yeah,
cool because most people's stories aren't that. They did their career, had success or failure, and then they just fell into real estate or they watched House Hunters, right? And they were like, oh,
exactly.
I love interior design. So they got into it. So that's pretty cool. So you were an independent broker. We might have listeners that are considering that or doing that or currently doing that. What were some of the struggles and successes you had as just a broker owning your own brokerage?
Yeah. Oh man, there's a lot. I can just say definitely to anybody thinking about if you're not on that path already, think long and hard about it because there's a lot of stuff I didn't know. I think, I wouldn't change my path. Like I'm glad that, I did it. But I think at the time I was kind of naive. Like I didn't realize what all it took and like to run a business, especially to run a real estate brokerage based business. What I came to realize, and those running an independent brokerage may know this already, is the margins are very thin when you're an independent. Like, it's one of those things where you think that everybody just wants to join you and they're going to stay with you for, indefinitely, just because you're such a great person. Or you're such a great marketer, you're such a great business person, whatever. But realistically, people, they're in it for their opportunity. And so they're constantly always evaluating if like what they're getting is the best, value. And so for you to be a good brokerage owner, this is what I didn't realize, you have to provide things, right? You have to provide a lot, whether it's your time and energy, pouring it into those agents to help them be successful. But then also, like when I had my office, we had a physical brick and mortar location, which is what some of those agents valued. We had systems and tools, like CRM system that I provided to the agents. We had lead generation. I even had staff, nearing the end of it where I had somebody that worked in the office to kind of help with transaction management and stuff like that. And it got to be pretty expensive, in the neighborhood of like $20,000 to $25,000 per month, and on average. And I had about 15 agents, and each of them were on different splits. But I can tell you without a doubt that the split that I got from those agents at the time was never enough to fully cover all of the overhead that we had for the office. And so a lot of what we ended up doing was I was supplementing the business, like because I was still
You're
selling
selling, right?
myself. And a lot of, to keep the doors open, the money was coming out of my income. So if I would make 350, 400,000 in a year, in GCI, I would end up taking home like 80 grand at the end of the year, and it was just like, why am I doing this? And it was one of those things where you go and you're walking on eggshells all the time because at any moment some agent could, think the grass is greener over here and leave. And then, oh, now I got to go replace this person. And you're constantly fielding more questions because, at the time it was like thinking I was going to get more freedom because here I am getting agents and hoping they're going to, do their thing and bring in income to the business. And it wasn't like that. Like I was doing my own business, fielding my own questions from my clients, buyers and sellers. But then I was also fielding in all these questions and trying to do things with the agents. And to where I was working 70 to 80 to 90 hours in a week. And this was when I had my kids, and they were young and like I wanted to spend time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is the opposite direction that I had intended to go with this. That was about 4 years of doing that from 2013 to 2017.
So do you think was it kind of a slow burn of you realizing that, or did it feel like maybe a few months in you're like, oh, hold on a second, what was it? What was that experience like?
No, it was a slow burn. It was that, and then it was also just, that feeling of like, I can change this, I can fix this, kind of like
Right.
the thinking
Yeah, we're
like, hey,
problem
like
solvers. That's what agents
yeah,
are, right?
exactly. Like, hey, like I'll figure this out, and I just kept thinking like, I'll figure this out, I'll figure this out. And realistically, I mean, it was just, it's a tough business. Anybody who has ever run an independent brokerage, I think can tell you, the percentage of indies that end up being really successful, like to where it is like a kind of a passive business. I mean, it's, fraction of 1%. It's like, it's not even
Right.
close.
Right.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
because
and
it's a
I just didn't know that.
scalability that's just not really there
Yeah.
necessarily. You know, it can be obviously, but um, speaking of that, so let's jump subjects a little bit. So then your journey, you left, you came to EXP Realty, right? And you've become a master at the revenue share part of it. Now, this isn't for, this isn't an EXP podcast, but I will say for your specific journey, I would like to hear how, like, making the transfer from an independent brokerage to, being like, this isn't passive at all, to, I mean, full transparency, how many homes did you sell last year, right?
I think I did like maybe 4 or 5. Yeah,
Right,
just like yeah.
exactly. Right, but well, your GCI was well over what?
Yeah, I mean, well over, close to probably 400, when you factor 400,000 with, all the revenue share and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so you actually, in a non-planned way, you planned it out now. So tell us that journey from going from not having passive income and still having massive expenses to making the leap to a revenue share brokerage and now doing that. What I know that in a short amount of time, but what was that journey like?
Yeah, well, I mean, the funny story is, and I mean, only a few people kind of know this, but even when I joined EXP, I was pretty hesitant, right? Like, I kind of thought like this was summer of 2017 that I joined, and the only reason I even took the meeting to like hear about EXP was because of my CPA. And so, like, literally, I had this guy, which now too, Pat Hayes, right? He'd been
Yep.
reaching out to me for about a year, and I just kept blowing him off like, dude, I've got my own brokerage. Why would I ever, listen to this? And it wasn't until I was filing my taxes in 2017, my CPA was like, hey, I just did this guy's taxes and he's doing some crazy stuff with real estate where he's, making some residual and, and my CPA knew my business. And he was kind of impartial source. So when he was telling me like, hey, you need to look at this, opportunity, it carried a little bit more weight. And so then at that point, I left the meeting. I called Pat up. I was like, all right, man, hey, I'm probably still not going to join, but I want to hear this thing. What is it? And basically, I just saw that it was a way that I could still build my business kind of within a business
Hmm.
and kind of offload a lot of the overhead and the risk that I had been taking over the last 4 years. And so I did it. And then so fast forward then, I joined and probably the first like 8 months, I really didn't do much, quite honestly, with like the revenue share opportunity. It was more of just like I could kind of finally breathe again because I didn't have all the
Yeah.
overhead. And like I was like, let me just start selling some more homes again and making some money and actually like keeping this money and replenishing the bank accounts, paying off the credit cards, doing all that stuff. And so I really just put my head down and started selling. And then I would say like 2018, like, springtime, I was like, all right, hey, I'm going to get serious about, this revenue share thing. Like it's a good opportunity. Why not take advantage of it? And so I started to like kind of add it into my daily business to where I was still focused on selling. Like I probably spent 80-90% of my work week focused on selling, working with buyers and sellers. And but I'd sprinkle in like 10 to 20%. Like I would take a meeting and go to coffee with an agent, or I'd spend like an hour or two like prospecting to some agents, like calling, texting, whatever. And I just started trickling it in. And and so then really it probably, I would say, it started to snowball pretty quick. I'd get maybe 2 agents a month or something that would want to join the brokerage with me. And then I was like, wow, this is working. I started getting some money, like, a couple grand, a month in revenue share. And it's like, man, I need to actually make this a bigger part of my business. So then I was like, well, how can I do it online? Like, how can I take this, do it on social media, do it with, Google, do it with like all these other things versus just doing it in my personal local based business. And then that's kind of what set me down my path of like SEO and stuff.
That's fantastic. And then what you did there was you did create this community within your team, right? This new brokerage team, even though they weren't on your team or they weren't part of your, they weren't under you, like you weren't responsible for them really, but you created this community of training the agents. I feel like you probably had a lot of knowledge from training your independent brokerage. You're like, oh, if I put this online, right, and that's the path you decided to take, which again, your YouTube channel, if people haven't gone to your YouTube channel, go pause it and go right now, because it is so much, it's so full of so much valuable content. It's insane. That's why you have so many subscribers. But so go with that mindset of like, what happened when you're like, okay, I can, like you just said, you just cut off, like I can go much broader with this and the opportunity is kind of endless. Did you sit down by yourself and write down goals, or what, like how, or was it an accident? Did you hit record? Like, what was that journey like?
Yeah, well, so funny enough, I mean, it was kind of two things. Basically, what happened was I had been doing Zoom calls and like meetings like with my group and even the agents that were with me in locally in San Antonio, I was doing Zoom calls just because I had gotten rid of my office already. And so I was already doing them. And that's kind of the start of like creating my YouTube videos was Zoom. So like if you go back to some of my very first YouTube videos, they're like just recorded Zoom calls that I did with the team. And I started to realize, like, wow, like if I answer these questions on video, like the next time somebody has that question, like I don't have to answer it again. I can just like send them a link real quick. And I
Yeah.
was like, so let me, publish these things on YouTube. And so that's kind of how like the channel started. But at the same time, it wasn't really like I still hadn't thought of like using, that start of it for actually like agent attraction or for my business. Because funny enough, what had happened was like in 2018, when I was like, I want to take this a little bit bigger, I had done a lot of like Google advertising, still did, for like buyers and sellers. And I was like, I know Google ads. Let me use that for EXP, right? Like, let me
Hmm.
run some ads for EXP and, and get, people who, are interested or are searching about the topic. And that's how I originally thought I was going to do this. Well, shortly after, maybe like 4, 5, 6 months of doing that, I get a message from Glenn Sanford, the founder of EXP. And he's like, hey, we just came out with this thing called the Agent Attraction Pledge. It says in it that we're not going to allow agents to run advertising for agent attraction purposes. And I was like, oh, well, that kind of stinks. Like, that's what my plan was. Like, this is how I was going to do this. And so that was like a kind of a, shot in the gut. And I was like, what am I going to do? I had to pivot. I was like, man, well, if I come up organically, like I still, I still want to make things to where if somebody searches, if I come up organically, they can't stop me from doing that. Right. Like that was my thought. Like I just can't run ads. That's what he said. And I was like, well, so let me learn how to show up organically for these different search terms and different things. And that's honestly when it's kind of started to transform my process and my content creation and just learning about SEO and how to optimize things, how to get strategic with it and like figure out like what are people actually like what are agents actually searching for versus just creating whatever. Because even those first few YouTube videos that I'd put out that were just Zoom calls, they weren't optimized, they weren't really
Right.
like anything specific that somebody would have been searching for. And so I was like, look, I can actually make a go at this if I can learn this process. And so it was just, that was probably, you know,
Pretty big turning point.
2019-ish, I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah, 2019-ish. And so yeah.
So then let's go there then. So you say optimize, you say SEO. Now I feel like most people in 2023 start to know what that is, but I mean we don't need to dumb it down a little bit. But when you say that, it seems so simple in your brain, but to my brain, I understand it needs to work, but I don't even know where to go or what to do. And I feel like a lot of people don't. That's why you're dominating, right? So if you
Yeah.
can like, what's your like when you say optimize, what's your if let's say you're going to write a blog, right? Um, what's your process? What are your steps? And what tools do you use?
So the first step I would say, in creating like SEO optimized content would just be research the topics, like research. So, first off, before you even do that, I mean, this is part of kind of maybe your business plan or your idea is who's your target audience, first of all, right? Like, cause like whoever's watching this right now, maybe you're not thinking of this in the sense that I am, right? Where it's like I'm targeting, agents and wanting that to be my target audience. Maybe yours is, buyers and sellers in whatever your local market is, but even be more specific than that. Like, what is your niche? Like, who do you
First
typically
time
service?
home buyers,
First
first
time
time
home
home seller,
buyers,
move up buyers, right? Or so,
relocation people. Yeah,
right.
whatever it might be. Like, but be very specific. Like, who is your target audience? And then you have to put yourself in in their shoes and really figure out like, well, what are the things that these people are interested in and how are they navigating the internet, right? Like that's kind of how you have to figure it out. Because it all starts there. If you don't get that right, then you're going to put a lot of effort in for no purpose. And so, I kind of knew like where my target audience is, and I knew what they were searching for. Like I was researching things, and to really get to kind of get an idea of that. There's a couple different ways that you can find that kind of stuff out. Like you can use keyword research tools specifically. Like I use a tool called Ahrefs,
Okay.
which is a pretty popular, keyword research tool in the industry. And you can
How do you
go in
spell
there
that?
and
What's that called again? Eight.
uh, Ahrefs. So
Cool.
Ahrefs
Thanks.
.com. Yeah. And basically you go in there and you can put in any kind of a, search keyword that you think somebody might be searching for, and it'll tell you there's only 10 searches a month on this keyword, or there's 54,000 searches a month on this keyword, right? So that's there's a big difference, right? Like, and it can be subtle too. Like you might, put like the best brokerage in the US and get, 1,000 searches a month. And then you might put like best broker in the US and there could be like 10, right? And you don't even know that until you search and
So you're
know
just being creative and being like do it a bunch of different ways to see how what the opportunity is, right? With the least, the better, right?
exactly. Yeah, and I still use, like, Google Auto Suggest, so if you just go to, like, Google's, website and their search box and you kinda start to type stuff and you see, like, what it suggests immediately down below that, those are usually good guides to let you know, like, Google there's people searching for those terms, otherwise Google wouldn't have them in that box there. So, like, I usually will start there and I'll, like, use Google Auto Suggest, get some suggested things, and then I'll pop those things into Ahrefs. And then Ahrefs is great because then it's actually got like, all sorts of extra like similar words that you might use and stuff like that. So, anyways, that's kind of the process to get started because then from there I can see, okay, these keywords get a lot of volume per month. And this is the other side of it that's really helpful about the tool is it tells you the difficulty of you ranking for those particular terms.
That's
And so,
cool.
like in the beginning, when you're just getting started, you're going to want to go after some easy terms, right? Because you're not ranking yet. You have no links, people linking to your site. So there's like really no reason why Google will rank you very high on difficult terms. So you have to go after the ones that are, that are more obscure. They called long-tailed keywords. And so, like an example of this might be instead of going after the search term, you know, how to buy a house in San Antonio, right? Like that might be a very competitive keyword because that's something that probably a lot of people are searching, but there's also a
Right.
lot of people that may be, creating content for that. Maybe you have to go after like how to buy a home in San Antonio with less than, for less than $400,000, right? Or
Right.
something like that. Like you add on, and that's why they're called long tail keywords, and then you create a piece of content that's specific to that particular term because you can be the best when you go after more obscure things versus if you're competing with a bunch of people. So anyways, I compile a list of a bunch of different keywords and things that I want to go after and make a spreadsheet. And then and this is I think the thing that separates most successful content creators from those that don't, is then you just have to be consistent with knocking out those terms. A lot of times people will pick up steam, they'll be like, all right, I'm doing this, and they can do that. Like you can go and get a subscription to Ahrefs and start like finding out your keywords. You can do all that within like 3 hours, right? 2 3 hours, 4 hours. You can have your plan ready to go. And then you might even start like creating content. But I think the thing that separates is like, are you going to continue to show up week in, week out, creating, you know, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200, 500 pieces of content, over time. And that's the thing that really, because everybody can do it. It's just a matter of, are you going to stay doing it?
So yeah, because ultimately most people get excited about a new tool or a new thing, right? And with content creation, whether it's a blog or a video, how many times do you put something up and you think it's going to be great and nobody watches it or nobody
Oh
reads
yeah.
it, right? And
Yeah.
then but you just keep doing it. So you've created a system in your world where you just create and move on to the next piece, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, so I mean, yes and no. So here's the kind of the interesting thing because now I've been doing the content piece for, I guess this is going on probably 3 solid years, but 4 years in total. And so, usually you create that piece of content, you put it out there and you don't have to think about it. But eventually now what I'm starting to realize is you do have to go back and you got to like, revise, and there's a lot of things that change, like dates and stuff, like if you reference things. So it's not something you have to do all the time necessarily where it's like I always differentiate like social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and like YouTube and Google. I think like those, YouTube and Google are very different
Hmm.
because for the most part, you do put that content out and you can kind of like let it, let it do its
Let
thing,
it
right? You
burn.
have to touch it
Yeah.
for a while. Whereas like Facebook, if or Instagram, you don't post for a week or a day, even sometimes it's like you're not getting shown up. You're not going to get seen by your audience. And so it is that like that's kind of the differentiator. There will be some maintenance you have to do eventually to your posts, but for the most part, especially in the beginning when you're just creating, like I remember, the first 2 3 years I was just creating. I wasn't thinking about like going back and like having to revise things. That's kind of later on in the game that you do have to do that. So
Yeah.
in the beginning, yeah, it is pretty much just like you create whatever the best piece of content at that time is that you think you can make on that subject. You release it, you promote it a little bit, in the beginning. Like I've got an email list and I've got social media and I'll promote it to those channels. And then at that point, it just kind of like, sits there. And some of those pieces of content take off. Some of the pieces kind of flounder out and they don't do so great. But, ultimately, and I think this is the other thing to really point out to the audience is that in the beginning, most of your content is not going to take off at all. Like, the first 30 to 50 posts or pieces of content you make are probably not going to do very much. And I think for a lot of agents, that's very discouraging. That seems very slow. And it is, right? It's kind of a slow build. Like if you're needing to sell a house 30 days from now, 60 days from now, like this probably isn't going to be the mechanism to get you to do it, right? You're not going to
Right.
just publish a piece of content and then all of a sudden like the leads
You have
start
7
flowing in.
buyers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not quite like that. It's this is the long game. And when I say long game, I'm not talking like it has to take 3 4 years until it's actually successful. I mean, some agents can have success within 4 to 6 months with, actually generating leads
Consistency.
from what they're
Right.
doing. But it is one of those things where, the more you do of it, the quicker that you do it, the quicker your results will be. Like I do really believe that you need to get to about 30 to 50 published pieces of content before like you're really going to start to see some of these
Before
benefits.
Google, because with YouTube and Google, before Google and YouTube are like, oh, okay, this person is legit. People are watching this person. They have something to say and it's valuable information, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, you're basically like Google is kind of like, testing you out. Like, hey, is this person going to really stick? Because I mean, there's like millions and millions of websites out there, and the majority of those websites, though, they might have like anywhere from like 1 to 5 pieces of content. They just end up fizzling out, right? But the actual websites that have, valuable content is few and far between. And so Google, before they really start to publish you, and push you out to the masses, they want to know like, is this person here to stay? Like, and then, if they do start to push you out to the masses, like, is this person putting out good stuff where people are actually staying on page, reading it? Or if you're, on YouTube, are they actually watching the videos, like through to the end, if possible?
Right.
And so, yeah, so there's like those types of ranking things. But yeah, I think the biggest thing though, like going back to your question about the process, is just starts with keyword research, creating a plan of attack. Like who's your audience? What are you going to serve them? What type of content? How are you going to do it strategically? Like what are the keywords? And then here's the thing that I think gets, a lot of people that gets hung up on is that, they start thinking like, well, this piece of content is not good, right? Like either I'm not a good writer and I just wrote this thing and it's not that good, or I don't, I'm not good on video and I just created this video and it's not good. And so I think the next thing I want to talk about is maybe that is kind of just this idea that like, when you first start this thing, it's going to it has to be perfect, and or it's going to be perfect. Like it's
Right.
not. Like I say, my first piece of content, there were like Zoom videos, they were terrible blog posts. Like it was not the best stuff, right? But that really didn't matter. Like I'm not saying to go intentionally put out junk, but don't like criticize yourself for where you're getting started at. Like go out there, put what you think is good out there and don't second guess yourself. And then the nice thing is if you consistently do it, you will get better at the craft over time.
Well, it's the same. It's just similar to if you're helping people buy and sell, you go on your first listing consultation, we can all talk through that. And we were terrible. Everybody's terrible
Yeah.
because you don't know what to expect. You're just making
Yep.
stuff up, right? Even if you have training or not, but you get better by doing it over and over, showing homes, writing contracts, negotiating. The more you do it, the better you get at it. There's just paychecks that come along with that, with learning those skill sets. With content creation, you're just hoping you get paychecks. So, but you knew back when you started doing this, you just trusted yourself and trusted if the things if in my life, if I do it consistently, I'll see success. I'll see rewards. Right.
Exactly, and I was, trying to, like, figure out small wins, right? So, like, I would
That's
put,
great.
Google Analytics on my website, and, like, even if I, got 4 units of traffic, right? Like, 4 people clicked on them, like, that was a win for me, right? And I would just, like,
Huge.
celebrate all of the little things along the way, even though it necessarily wasn't, like, providing me income at the time. Like, fortunately, I was still, actively selling real estate, like, I still had other stuff going on to make income, but I was celebrating these wins because I could see the trajectory of where it was taking me. And I also was plugged in to like watching creators and seeing that, like, okay, hey, this person, they're successful doing it now. It might have taken them 3, 4 years, but I will be there if I just stay on this path. And that's kind of, what I did. And so I was plugged into people that were doing it. I was watching them on YouTube. I was actually connecting and talking to other
Asking
creators as
questions.
well,
Yeah.
asking questions, and that was, like, what helped me to stay, on the right path
Focused.
and stay focused, yeah.
That's awesome. So talking about this now, there's all these tools out here. I feel like the game has changed. We have Chat GPT, which is mind
Yeah,
blowing. So,
yeah.
and just AI stuff. Do you suggest and do you personally use those AIs, or do you still? I know when you first started, you'd write yourself because we've had that conversation. You'd write your own scripts. You'd write
Mhm.
your own blogs. Do you still use that, or are you using any of the AI stuff?
Great. Yeah, no, I'm so thankful for like ChatGPT and these AI tools to come out. At first, I was a little nervous, right? Like, I think ChatGPT came out in November of 22, and I didn't really hear about it until like December-ish.
Right.
And I was looking, I was like, wow, this thing is actually truly powerful. Like there had been some AI tools before ChatGPT, but they were really never good enough, in my opinion, to like make worthwhile stuff. And if you tried using them, it almost seemed like it would like slow me down versus me just like, kind of like writing them myself. But ChatGPT was finally the first one where I'm like, this actually is helpful, right?
Right.
And so, but then the second thought that kind of came through my mind after I was like, well, this is helpful, is but do I really need to use this on my site, or should I be using this on my site? Because, at first Google hadn't really put out like a stance on like if AI content is going to be like penalized in some, form, because there is ways that, they can detect kind of AI, even though it is original content and this type of thing. Like, I mean, there's tools now where you can actually throw an article into, and it'll tell you like a probability, like this is 98% sure that it's AI written versus, if I put
Right.
something I wrote, it's like 98% sure that it's, human written.
Original. Yeah.
And so that's where it's, so they, and if there's tools like that that can create it, Google, I can guarantee you can decipher it, right?
Right.
And so I was a little nervous at first, but then probably about a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, Google actually came out with their stance on AI content,
Ooh,
and they
breaking
actually,
news. Breaking news. What'd they say?
yeah, yeah, yeah. They actually said, that they will not penalize AI content just for the sake of it being AI generated. However, they are still going to treat it like how they've always kind of treated search results, which is a on if you're creating like duplicate content, which a lot of times if you're using AI, it is duplicate. Like
Right.
it's not going to be word for word duplicate, but like let's just say you go in there and you put a blog, you say, ChatGPT, make me an article on, how to buy a house in San Antonio, Texas. Well, I tell you what, I mean, there's probably 50 other agents that probably put that same prompt in there. In the blog post, maybe it's not word for word, but I can guarantee you, like the headlines, the format of it, like everything is going to look very similar. And Google knows, they'll be able to see like that's very very similar. That's going to be considered
And what the
duplicate.
AI is doing is pulling from blog posts that are already written, correct?
Right.
Anyway, whether
Correct.
it's original or AI. So it is just regurgitating it. However, it's still original,
Correct.
quote unquote.
That's 100% right. And so that's where what Google stance is saying like, well, if you use AI to create your stuff and we can tell that it's AI, that's okay as long as you're providing a solid piece of content that is not like duplicated with, all these other people that might be using the prompts. And so what that tells me, or what that, has allowed me to use AI for, and specifically ChatGPT, is like I still need to be the one that formulates the ideas, like for like what I end up doing, because I'll even be truthful. Like I feel like I'm still not a great writer, right? Like I've written all these blog posts. I was always more of a math person myself, right? Like I was a finance major. I was always a math guy. And usually, most people know you're either like an English person or you're like a math person, right? Like that's just how your brain works. And so as much of the writing that I've done, I still don't necessarily feel that like my writing is in a great state, right? Where I can just write and it's very interesting and written correctly. And so what I use ChatGPT for is like I'll just throw my words down on paper, like kind of raw and just like really fast. And then I'll say, hey, ChatGPT, rewrite this for me, like in a good way or whatever, right? And like it's really interesting to see what they do. They still take my ideas, they word it though that sounds a lot better. And so that's like one example of something that I might do. So I come up with like an outline still, kind of write stuff, pretty raw. And
Yeah,
so the way that I would say that most people should use ChatGPT if you want it to be effective for you from an SEO standpoint is use it as a companion. Don't use it as
that's
like,
that's
you
great.
know, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, like don't use it as
even
your
like
end all be all.
if you write a basic blog or a simple YouTube script about buying a house in, Dallas, and then just say rewrite this in a more energetic way or a more fun way or an informative way, right? And then it'll type that all out. It is super powerful. It's kind of crazy. I keep waiting for something to go wrong with it because it feels
Yeah.
like the remember. Did you ever play video games? You
Oh
probably
yeah.
did.
Oh yeah.
Remember the Contra left, left, right, right, down,
Yeah.
up, down. It feels
Yep.
kind of like
Got
that.
the cheat codes, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
feels a little bit like a cheat code. So hopefully, it should be able to really boost people's content creation, especially that aren't in the content creation world. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
I think another thing that it does a great job of too is like you said, it'll help people boost their content creation because now what you can do is like, let's say you go out and you make a blog post that was you creating it. Now, maybe it was ChatGPT as your companion and it was kind of like helping you to formulate it and to do this thing, but you're still like putting some effort into it to make that post. Well, now you can actually take that post and you can have ChatGPT repurpose it for you, right? So like what I will do now, and if it's an extremely long post, this you might have to like kind of cut some sections because they call them tokens, but like ChatGPT right now, it's good for I think it's up to like 4,000 or 5,000 tokens, which a token is like a character. So if you write like a 3,000 word blog post or something like that, and you basically what you want to do is like I'll feed ChatGPT my blog post that I just wrote, and I'll say now repurpose this into a 350 word YouTube short or TikTok or Instagram reel. And now I'm feeding them an article that I made. So it's original. It's still
So
like
it's yours. It's
my
your brain.
thoughts,
It's coming from
but
your
it
brain.
shrinks it down. It shrinks it down to where it's like, okay, now this can, fit inside of a 1 minute video. Right. And so then it'll create, 500 words. But the reason I brought up the tokens thing is like, again, if it's a 4,000 word limit, if you're feeding it a lot of stuff and you're expecting also that it's going to, send you a bunch of stuff, its max is 4,000. So you won't want to go, and do because
Yeah,
like
I hear you.
what I have tried to do is like, hey, take this blog post and make me a YouTube script that's 2,000 words. Well, if it goes above it, it starts to it'll either cut it off right there.
Yeah.
But those are some ways that you can create more content pieces using ChatGPT a lot faster.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. So real quick, where you are now in your content creation, are you still doing blogs and YouTube? You're doing the same, right?
Yeah.
Are you doing it this like whatever your topic is? Are you keeping it the same, or do you have separate blogs and separate YouTube videos?
No, so actually, and I think this is a great tip as well for people who are just even if you're just wanting to like get big on YouTube. I'll tell you, I mean, I think that it's so important to have like a blog to go along with it, and I do mirror my content pieces on both platforms, right? Like that's so to answer your question there.
Hmm.
And here's why I think it's so important is what's interesting is I have about the same amount of content on my blog as I do on my YouTube channel. I've got about a little over 300 pieces at this point, like 320, 330 pieces of content. What's interesting is I get about 100,000 page views on my blog every month, and I get about 60,000 views on my YouTube videos every month. And so what that tells me is that more people are actually on Google searching for stuff than they are on YouTube. I mean, they're obviously both big platforms, right?
Right.
But Google's a very big platform, and what's
It is the
cool,
platform.
it
It's
is
the number one search engine. It always will
the
be,
number one
right?
search engine. And so if you're not on there, I mean, you're limiting a lot of traffic potential. And so what I do is I'll take that YouTube video, I'll embed it into my blog post, and that feeds views to my YouTube videos, which again will help the algorithm on YouTube to then show my videos on, when somebody searches for that on YouTube as well. And so it's basically just one of these things where you've already created the content. Like for me, kind of my workflow recently has been where I will actually start with creating my blog post first, just because it helps me to put my ideas on paper. In the beginning, I actually used to create the YouTube video first. And I would just be like, my videos would end up being like 40, 50 minutes long, which is not ideal for YouTube because it's too long. People like
Yeah.
12-minute, 15-minute videos on YouTube. And, I can be long winded. And so I'm just over there, I would explain the topic really well, but it would take me very long to get to, the
The
points.
point, right?
And then what I was doing is I would take that YouTube video and I would have it transcribed. Then I would take that and try and take that transcription and shrink it down to a blog post, which, when you have a 40-minute long video, that's like 12,000 words. Like I might as well be reading a book at that point, you know what I mean?
Right.
To try and
Yeah.
limit that down. Whereas now I go the other way. I create my blog post first, and I know that if I create like a 1,500 to 2,000 word blog post, that I can then use that either as a script or an outline for my companion YouTube
The
video.
video.
And then that becomes, a 12-minute, 15-minute YouTube video. And I make that and get it edited, and then I go back and throw it and embed it into the blog post later on. And so, yeah, so
That's
it's
cool.
and
So
then
your
yeah.
workflow goes from where it is now, which is pretty precise and very slick. I will say it's pretty. I've seen it in action. So you go now that you have Chat GPT, let's say. So you write down your original thought. You do the keyword research of like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want it to be about because I can see an opportunity, a crack, right? And then you can go to Chat GPT and say, write a blog post, rewrite this, and then you take that, you post it onto your website, right?
Yep.
And then you take that and you can go to Chat GPT. I don't know if you do or not, but you can say, rewrite this into a 9-minute YouTube script or 5-minute YouTube script. You film it and you have a nice, what camera do you use? Just so everybody can hear.
I use a Sony ZV-E10.
Okay.
It's
So you have a nice, beautiful camera. You invested in it, right?
Yep.
And do you script yourself or do you have notes or how do you film all your videos?
Yeah, so for my like regular like published videos, they're scripted. I have a teleprompter, all that good stuff. Basically, just takes my blog post and and the nice thing is like I haven't actually used ChatGPT the way that you mentioned it earlier, where it's like just I put it in the blog post and then make it a script. I'll do that for like short form stuff because,
Okay.
like I say, that just the way that the prompts are, the tokens, I
Yeah.
can't get like a long script with a long blog post fed into it yet. But I will use it for like short form stuff right now. And
Okay.
but what I do though is I'll take my blog post and literally I won't even change a thing, and I'll put that on the teleprompter. But what's great about it is, and most of the time I can just read my blog post not word for word, but as I'm reading on teleprompter, I'm just kind of like using it to guide me. So like if
Sure.
some stuff sounds too like just written, then I'll change it up, right? I'll just go in and kind of, add in my own little spin on that particular sentence or that particular paragraph or whatever. But it's really easy to do with that teleprompter right in front of you.
Got it.
And
So then
so
you
that's why
you read it and then or highlight it and read the highlights and then you do because I film content too and I think a lot of people think it has to be a one take perfect time.
no.
You have an editor that you send it
Yep.
to, right?
Oh yeah.
And so when you as you're reading this or doing it, there's times I know I do. I'm like, oh, never mind, don't take that. Let's go rewind that, and then you start over, right? Or start in the middle of it, correct? So
Yeah,
there's
exactly. I mean, yeah, like for a 12 to 15 minute long YouTube video, like finished, like it's usually probably 35 minutes of me on camera, right? Because
yeah,
like, my edit, like sometimes I'll just like stop and pause and kind of like recollect my thoughts. And my
yeah,
editor knows just like cut out all that kind of stuff, or if I screw up, I just, like come back up on the script and,
and just
and
do it
re-say
again.
it again, do it. Sometimes I have to do
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 takes,
Yeah.
of the
And then
same
your
thing.
editor, where do you have multiple editors? Like what's that real quick? Like where'd you find that person?
I've used multiple editors. Currently, I have one editor that I work with
Okay.
consistently, but I mean, I've had to, go through a few different editors to find the one that I want. But
What's
I've
a good
used
website?
Upwork.
Upwork. There it is. Upwork.
Yep.
That's what it is.
Yep, yeah, you can
Upwork.com.
see reviews and you can, search for people on there and, get samples of their work, like, what
That's
channels they've
awesome.
worked on, all that good stuff. And so, yeah, I definitely recommend Upwork.
So they edit it and you invest in that because it's worth it, right? Overall.
Yep,
Because you've edited your own videos, I'm sure at
I
some point.
have.
And how long
Yeah.
would that take you?
Well, I mean, and that's the thing is, I mean, it took me like even once I knew how to edit videos, I mean, it takes hours, to go
Hours,
through, or like, yeah, to go through a video, to add in all the assets and the different things into it, to color grade it, to get the sound the way that you want it.
graphics.
Like yeah, it takes a while, right? And so even when you know how to do it, it takes a while. But I'll tell you, if you're like thinking like, of just getting started with it, it's going to take you like weeks and months, right?
Months.
Just of like learning it, getting, familiar with the program,
Well, then you have
that
to
kind of stuff.
buy Premiere Pro or Adobe
Premiere
or
Pro,
something that
Final
costs,
Cut.
yeah, Final
Yeah.
Cut that costs almost as much as just hiring somebody, a third party from Upwork, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and
Yeah,
then plus the other thing too is like once it's out of your hands, like at this point, like I just record, send the footage off, right? Like I don't see it again until it's like done. Whereas like some people may see it and be like, oh, I don't like that. And then they go back and they like remake. It's like, no, like just make it for me. I don't want to see it again. I've already
yeah,
done the recording, it's done, right? And
yeah.
so take it off my plate. Yeah.
So then you get there, you upload it. How many weekly YouTube uploads are you doing right now?
So right now I'm doing about 2 uploads a week, and so, I was at one point doing all the way up to 3, which is a lot, I'll tell you, and
Yeah.
even 2 is a lot right now. For most content creators, like video-wise, anywhere from 1 to 2 a week, I think is solid. Like, if you can do that just getting started, especially, like because 'cause you're gonna have a lot of other things, you gotta still sell real estate, you're probably out
Yeah.
there working with clients, showing buyers around, that kinda stuff. Like, make it a goal. Don't overextend yourself and think like, "Oh, well, I gotta do 3 or 4 or 5 a week," like, because so and so is doing that much. Like, just make a goal to do 1 a week in the beginning, and
Yep.
then you'll know pretty quickly, can I do more? Do I need to do less? Hopefully, I mean, 1 a week is a pretty good cadence, like on YouTube. You probably don't wanna do too much less than that, but, but you gotta do what works for you that you can be consistent with.
Talk about batch recording. And this is what I do now. I feel like a lot of people who create a lot of content do it. Most people probably know what it is, but what's your batch recording schedule look like on any
Yep.
given month?
Yeah, so that's the cool thing too is like if you're creating all these blog posts at first, you're basically having all the scripts right there for you. And so like let's say I make 4 blog posts, and I haven't, made those videos yet. Well, then I just grab those 4 blog posts, throw it into the teleprompter, and like within 2.5 hours, I can, make the next 4 videos that are going to go on my channel. And so that makes it so much easier than like, especially if you have no script and you're just trying to sit there and make videos like randomly throughout. It's like, no, I'd rather just, make 4 videos, 5 videos in a given, morning or afternoon, send them out to the video editor, let them take a week, to edit them, get them all, done up, send them back to me. And then I just go on YouTube and I schedule. And then, my next, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month
It's a
can be
full
scheduled
system.
and I
It's a
don't have
full
to think about it.
system and a
Yeah.
schedule and a business that you've created now. So any given month, again, if you're just going to release one a month, you could film on March 1st, right? And then you have
Yeah.
4 YouTube videos until April, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's to be honest with you. So, like last summer, my family and I we took a 3 month trip up the East Coast. We started in Orlando.
Yeah,
You might have remembered this. We
I
went to
do.
Disney,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that was the start of our trip. We ended up visiting like 24 states on the eastern coast. We went all the way up to New Hampshire, over all the way to like Michigan. We were gone for 3 months. And I think we published. I published probably close to about 50 videos while I was gone on that trip, which is
Wow.
just crazy to think about it. But I mean, obviously, to do that, I did spend a lot of time like leading up to that trip of like, getting ready to batch. I batched a bunch of stuff. I scheduled a bunch of stuff. And so, but what was cool about that was that I could leave for 3 months and still have my channel going on, not, not missing a beat.
Yeah.
And
That's super
Yeah,
cool. And your audience had no idea. I mean, if they
no
know you
idea.
personally, they do, but a lot of them don't. So
Yeah, I
they're,
still do a live stream, so, like, what was kinda
oh
cool is
yeah,
I
I
do a
remember
live stream
those.
every week,
Yeah.
and so I'd be in, like, a different Airbnb, that was the only thing that would be
Yeah.
different, but if you actually watched my published videos versus my live streams, all my published videos were still, me with my studio in the background.
That's so cool. All right. Well, man, to me, this has been so helpful. I always like picking your brain about this stuff because you have mastered something that a lot of people haven't in real estate and non-real estate. So it's super impressive. Most success is formed from failure, right? So before we go, what is a big failure that's happened in your content creation that has launched you into this massive success?
In my content creation, I would say, geez, and I'll be honest, I still, deal with this right now, trying to work on this right now, is feeling like I have to do it all, right? Like, it has been very difficult to outsource, and I know that I could have 10 times the results that I have currently today if I were able to kind of get out of my own way on certain things, right? And so, like I say, I've got a video editor, that's fine, but there's like a ton of other things that I'm constantly doing in my business that I'm like, if I weren't doing this, I could just be making more content, or I could be doing this or that or whatever, right? And so I feel like, I've gotten better at it, but that is definitely in the beginning. I will say one of the things that just made it take longer for me to get the success was I was doing editing, I was doing everything, right? I hadn't hire anybody, and and it just was a slow grind, right? And
Yeah.
now it's like, I would say, like, a mild jog is where I'm at, right? But I'm still not like sprinting full speed. Like, I mean, you see some of these content creators, I mean, you look like, I still look at, like, the big ones, right? Like Gary V, Grant Cardone. I mean, you see how many pieces of content these
Yeah.
guys are pushing out. Granted, they've got massive teams, but here's the thing is I know content works. Like, I know that game works, and the only limitation is how much can you put out, right? And right now I'm limiting myself still to what my full capacity is. And so I think, the sooner that you can learn to not be this, like, oh, me mentality, like, I can do this best, or I've got to, do it, like, the better you can kind of get to, like, outsourcing and creating systems around that outsourcing, the more effective quickly that you'll be.
Man, that's such good advice. And I feel like I try to give that advice too, because it's the same way with me. You can't have any leverage if you're just doing everything by yourself, and then you're just burnt out and tired and mad all the time.
Yeah,
You see success, but you're like, man, I don't know if this is worth it. Right. So that's great
exactly.
advice. Well, Kyle, thanks so much for coming on, man. You know that I respect you. I appreciate you so much. If somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way people can find you, or if they have questions about content or real estate, or if they want to join your team, what's that look like?
Yeah, for sure. So, obviously check out my YouTube channel. You can comment on my videos. I do still respond to all my comments. So, I mean, that is something that, if you want to ask a specific question about certain thing, you can do that. My blog as well. You can jump on my newsletter, which, you put your email address in there. I'm going to send you, updates whenever I put out a new piece of content. And then you can actually reply to any of those emails and they come straight to me. I still check all my emails too. That's another thing that, I'm unlike most realtors, because I know a lot of realtors don't check their emails, but I do. Which my email is just kyle@thehandyteam.com. You can send me an email as well that way. Or of course, find me on social media. I'd say probably the best one that you can message me on, right away is Instagram. DM me on there,
Cool.
and just
Or
because
you
it seems
could
like everything else, it filters it. It
It
filters it.
does. Or you could
Yeah.
just Google Kyle Handy, because he's done SEO work. Actually, you should do
Good
it
point.
just now just to see how good he is, because it's actually ridiculous. Anytime I feel like I Google stuff still, it has nothing to do with you, and you're the second thing that pops up. I'm like, why is he writing a blog about buying a house in Florida? Doesn't even make sense.
Yep.
You
Yep.
beat me in my game. No, man, I appreciate you coming on so much. Thank you so much. And for all you listeners out there, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We got a lot more awesome guests coming up. Kyle, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Mark. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to my episode with Kyle Handy. That was super informative, and he's a good buddy of mine, so I always learn a lot when I talk to him. Hey, make sure you subscribe to this podcast, because every Thursday we're going to release a new episode with a great new guest, and they are going to give so much cool insight. So subscribe so you get notified, and also it would be really cool if you give us a 5-star review. That way it can reach a lot more agents just like yourself, and they can learn just like you are. Again, thanks for listening. See you on the next one.